Hi, I'm Catherine Jean Lopez from the National Review Institute, and I want to thank you for joining us, whether you're live or watching this after the fact. We are talking about foster care and adoption today, making room in the inn, opening hearts and homes to foster and adopt children. And this is National Review Institute, the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas, the ministry's Springs of Love, and the U.S. Conference of Bishops Secretariat for Laity, Marriage, Family, Life, and Youth. And we're going to begin today with some remarks from Archbishop Joseph Naumann from the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas. I'm particularly joyous to welcome him because over the last couple of years, he's really lit a fire under people to care about children who are unborn, mothers, and the forgotten children who are in the foster care system. Archbishop Naumann, thank you so much for your work with Walking with Moms in Need and really lighting a fire under people.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. And thanks to the National Review Institute for all that you've done really to highlight this important issue of foster care. And, it's an essential part, I think, of our pro-life ministry and our pro-life ethic, that we can't just be what sometimes we're accused of being, just wanting to get children born, but
right.
not really caring what happens to them afterwards. And so we were able to start Walking with Moms in Need, which I think is a very important program. And for many places like Kansas right now, where we really can't protect unborn children from abortion by law, we can rescue them with love, and to raise up our parish communities to be places that can surround a woman with a difficult pregnancy, but then also walk with that woman for as long as she desires. And most of our pregnancy resource centers do that for a couple of years. And hopefully that can make those families strong, so those children don't wind up in the foster care system. But there are children that will wind up in foster care. My own mother named me Joseph because my father was killed when she was pregnant with me. And she chose that name because she thought Joseph was a good foster father for Jesus. So, and she thought that he'd be a good patron for me. And so I always had an empathy for those children that need foster care. And I'm really grateful, hear from Deb Neeson for what our pro-life community, along with Catholic Charities and the whole network of the church here in the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, has done to try and raise awareness amongst our people of the need for foster families. And you'll hear statistics in the webinar how many children are in the foster care system, and we don't have enough families that are qualified and have gone through the training to be foster parents. So there's a great need there. In Kansas, I know we had articles in our paper a few years back that was showing children in foster care having to sleep in the offices of the social workers sometimes. So that also motivated me that we as a church needed to do something about this. And so that really was the impetus of our Thrive ministry to try and do what we could as a church. Years ago, there was a program that was started by a Catholic priest in Illinois called One Child, One Church, One Child. And his vision was if every church had a foster family, we could empty out the foster care system. And I think still that's true today. in some of our parishes are larger, we should have more than one foster family. But one of the things that not every family can do foster care, but we need to surround those that do with a loving community, and that's where our churches can come into play. You know, foster care, it's a beautiful ministry and calling, but it's not without its challenges, and we really need to surround those foster parents with a community of support that can help them in multiple ways. And one of those ways is, for instance, they can't just get a babysitter for their children. They need qualified, trained individuals that can do respite care so that our foster parents can do a date night or do something free from the everyday demands of parenting all the time. And so there's a lot that we can do and that people can do. There's multiple ways that you can get involved. And I think it really it makes credible our efforts to protect children from abortion when we can say we have these loving communities that will surround these mothers and fathers and give them the support that they need. And if children need foster care, we have families that are ready to step up and provide that and provide them a loving home for as long as they need. And we have communities that will surround these families with support and love. So thanks to all that are participating today. Thanks for your interest. I think the church has a very important role to play. And I know that I can speak for my brother bishops, and I think ministers of other faith communities too, that we believe the church has an important role to play, and we have a responsibility to raise up foster families, but also to raise up communities that'll support them. So thanks for participating today. I know it's going to be a great program, and I'll be praying for all of you and praying for us as a nation that we can really not allow any child to be left behind, but always to have a home and a family that will welcome them and support them and love them. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you again for having the sense of urgency that we all need to have, Archbishop Naumann. I want to introduce Julia Dzielski from the Secretariat of Laity, Marriage, Family, and Youth at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops now, to give a couple of thoughts again about how we're at this critical juncture right now after Roe versus Wade has ended, to really show people that we mean what we say when we talk about a culture of life and a civilization of love. Julia, can you talk a little bit, and also this webinar was your idea, so talk a little bit about why you wanted to do this right now.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. And Archbishop Naumann, thank you for those words of encouragement and inspiration, and honestly, for your tremendous witness and testimony to the gift of life, especially in the Archdiocese of Kansas City, and for all you do to support life in all of its stages. It is such a joy to be with you, especially today on the Feast of St. Nicholas. And, you know, we chose this day precisely because it's in the heart of Advent. And St. Nicholas was not only a loved bearer of gifts to children, but more importantly, he reminds us all that we are called to be bearers of light and hope, especially to those who are in need and to those in darkness. And especially this winter, I'm just thinking here in Washington, D.C., it is a day like the March for Life typically is. It's cold and raw out there. And but I do hope that this year at the March for Life in January, in a few short months, we will be marching in the light that has dawned with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But light bearing is still necessary, and it's still crucial, especially in this post-Roe society. The gospel call to care for the orphan continues today, especially in this post-Roe society. Recently, the National Framework for Marriage and Family Life Ministry, Called to the Joy of Love, which was produced by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, reminds us of this Christian responsibility and really asks all of us, Catholics and non-Catholics, to walk with the family and all its forms and all its messiness at all ages and stages, but also to become a family to those who do not have one. So it is a crucial time for us as a family of God. It's a crucial time for all of us as Christians to stand up, to respond to this call of the family, especially in this post-Roe society, and in the footsteps of what the bishops have laid out for us as a plan going forward for marriage and family life, to create this vision, this true culture of support to all families. And so on this Feast of St. Nicholas and in this heart of Advent, I just want to thank all of you for joining this crucial conversation. And let's all wait for the light of Christ to come in our hearts and open our doors, make room for Christ and for his children, his most beloved children that are born to us every day in this nation. So I just want to turn it over now to the panelists who have such beautiful testimonies to share. They have so much to say regarding this issue from a personal perspective, from a professional perspective, and pastoral perspective. So I'd just like to pass it on then to Deborah and to Kimberly. And thanks again, Catherine, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Julia. And I just want to underscore what Julia was just saying. You know, if you're a Christian watching this, we really have a responsibility in a renewed way after the end of Roe versus Wade. We have children in the foster care system right now. We shouldn't. We should be taking care of them. The Bible is clear about that. And one of my greatest fears after Roe is that we're going to have more children in foster care in a couple of years. And we need to be urgent about meeting that need and making sure that no child is alone. And that's why I'm so grateful for Kimberly Henkel, who is going to start us off. Kimberly is the founder and executive director of Springs of Love. And then we'll hear from Deborah Neeson, who works for, as you've heard, the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas. Kimberly, could you talk a little bit about your own experience as a foster and adoptive mom and about your ministry?
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. I'm very excited that we're having this event today. So my husband and I, we married a little bit later in our 30s, and we're hoping to have a large family, but ended up struggling with infertility. And after several years of just feeling very frustrated and isolated and not knowing, okay, God, where are you in all of this? We started to open the door a little bit towards looking into adoption. Unfortunately, Catholic Charities in our area was not doing adoptions. And we just had a very difficult time navigating where do we go, like, checking out different agencies. Some of them had different philosophies than what we had. And, we were looking at just all over and going and visiting different agencies and just not having a lot of luck. A lot of them were already full. They had so many families already waiting. And so we began to think about, what about fostering to adopt? And, we didn't know much about it, but we said, well, let's just start going down this path and sort of seeing what doors God opens. So we signed up with just the local children welfare agency and started taking some classes, and we were blown away. We just had no idea. There are over 400,000 children in foster care right now. There are over 100,000 children that are ready to be adopted in our current system, just waiting. And, we felt, gosh, we didn't really think about fostering, we were always just focused on adopting, but it definitely opened up our eyes to this need. And so here we had been very focused on our desire to adopt, which is, a good desire, but it opened up our eyes to the need of the child who actually needs a mother and a father right now. And we began to pray a lot about that and felt like, we could do this. So we actually signed up to be a foster to adopt. So they placed children with us who were likely to be adoptable, but it wasn't a guarantee. And so when we first brought our first son home, he was an infant from the hospital, and we didn't know if we were going to get to adopt him, but so we were very nervous. It was very scary. But once we brought him home, I'll tell you, just the grace was so amazing to me that I just had this sense that, this child needs me right now. Like, he needs a mother. He's completely helpless. He needs a mother, and perhaps I'll only be his mother for a few months, a few years. I didn't know, but I knew absolutely that he needed me at this moment. And so it gave me a great peace that I could do that, and joyfully so. And it was funny because I would walk around carrying this child, and people that I did not know would come up to me and say, "You are glowing. Like, I have never seen a woman glow like this with a child." They're like, "You're obviously so in love with your child." And I'd be like, he's a total gift. I'm like, he's a complete gift. And we're fostering him. And that just kind of blew people away. A lot of people said to me, "Well, you're kind of guarding your heart, right? Because, he might leave, right? You kind of have to sort of guard yourself, right?" And I was like, no way. Like, I am giving everything of myself to this child because that's what he needs, right? I mean, these children, they need to be bonded with. They need he needed a mama. So I'm like, I am pouring my love into this child and giving him everything and letting God take care of the rest. So, I mean, we were very, very, very blessed. We did get to adopt him, but that was also a heartache, right? Because I knew that his mother had just lost custody of him. So when we found out we were getting him, it was like, we were so excited, but yet there was this like sadness because I knew her heart was breaking. And so that's the, it's the juxtaposition just, of fostering. It's like, so then we were able to very quickly, pretty soon after, we found out about our twins that were just about to go into the system, and we ended up adopting them, and they were just babies. So we suddenly had 3 babies, which was incredibly crazy and amazing and overwhelming. And then when they were 4 years old, we fostered another little baby boy. And this time around, I was allowed to meet his birth mother. I was not with the first child. But with this one, I was able to go, and I specifically was like, I'd like to meet her. I'd like to get to know her. And so they, that wasn't typically done, but they took me into the room and I got to meet her. And I just was like, I'm here to take care of your baby and help you so you can focus on getting well, so you can come and take him home with you. And so, I just told her that I was there to support her, encourage her. I tried to make little gifts and pictures and things for her, and, sending her lots of pictures and updates on him just to keep her, feeling connected with him and feeling motivated to get well. So that was really such a gift. And it was a gift to my children because they would come to the visits and they would see her crying and they would say, "Why is she crying?" And I'm like, "Because she wants him. This is how your mamas were. They want to be with you. This is so hard." Like, she just is not able to take care of him. And so, just being able to kind of bring them into the whole, story and getting to teach them. Because I've heard a lot of people say, "How could I foster? How will that affect my birth children or my children that are already with me?" But it turns out to be a really beautiful thing. So anyway, we ended up fostering him for a couple of years, and then we did get to adopt as well, which was another gift. And I'm still in touch with his birth mother, and it's very beautiful. And she's thanking me all the time. Like, I'm getting texts from her regularly. Like, "I'm so grateful that he's with you, and I'm so grateful that you're able to give him what I cannot." And it's been a gift. So my husband and I decided we really wanted to start this ministry. So back several years ago, a girlfriend from grad school and I, who'd been both found out we were both struggling with infertility, started a ministry called Springs in the Desert to really help accompany those who are struggling with infertility. And, that itself, that's a grief that needs to really be processed and looked at. And so a lot of people will say, well, why don't you just adopt? And that's really not the greatest thing to say to somebody struggling with infertility, because, that's something that, they need to kind of figure out, just kind of have that peace, find some relief from that grief and community and support, and then be able to open their eyes to see what path does God have right now for our fruitfulness, for our marriage to be fruitful in the world. And for some, that will be fostering, some it'll be adopting. And so anyway, we started this ministry, Springs of Love, to help really come alongside and support couples who are trying to learn more about fostering and adopting, and to help them. We just did a Be Not Afraid discernment retreat to help couples kind of start to, to have just have examples of other families who are fostering and have adopted, just to kind of give, some encouragement and hope and inspiration and navigation through all of it, because it's so overwhelming. So this is what we're doing. And then we found out about all the exciting work that the Archdiocese of Kansas City is doing to support foster families. And so I'll turn that over at this point to Deb.
Well, Kimberly, before we go to Deborah, can you just talk for a moment about how critical accompanying families is? Because I often think that evangelicals have an advantage because you're often one church, and so you have to know what the needs are around you and in the community. Very often as Catholics, we assume there's someone taking care of the foster children, right? So it's not enough to just educate people and say you should foster and adopt. You really have to walk with people.
Yes, absolutely. I think, a lot of times we just kind of expect the government to take care of all the children in foster care, the foster families, like they're taken care of, but that is not true. Like we need the support of our community, of our parishes, to be praying for us. That's first and foremost, to be saying, what's going on? How are you doing? Just seeing us, saying like, I see what you're doing. Like, this is amazing. And how can I help you? How can I support you? What can I do? Because I think a lot of times we're so much isolated, like, oh, you've got your family under control and I got my family under control. But with the situation with fostering, a lot of times these kids are coming to us with so much brokenness, and so much sadness and history, trauma, abuse, neglect, and it's very overwhelming for the families. A lot of times families feel ill-equipped. Even with the training they've received, they need a supportive community. And so that's something else that Springs of Love is really committed to, is trying to create these care communities and parishes to really support these foster families, to come around them and say, hey, you know what, we're going to commit to making a meal for you guys once a week, because we know you're running around to all these appointments and you're taking care of your kids, because a lot of times children in care have a lot of extra needs that different appointments that they need to go to. And, it can be very overwhelming, particularly if you have multiple children and you're trying to meet everybody's needs. So yeah, a care community is essential, I think.
And I think that, we overuse the word trauma these days. Sometimes I don't think we fully appreciate what these children, that they've experienced things that are incomprehensible to many of us. And so it really is, little things like the Archbishop mentioned, date night is a big thing, making that kind of Oops.
Okay, you went out there for a minute, so I missed. I'm sorry, I missed what you said just for that last bit. But I heard the date night comment, and I think it is so. Burnout is real, and 50% of families who are fostering quit after the first year. It's just, it's exhausting. They're not prepared. They're not, they just think we can't do this. However, if people are coming in and saying, hey, we're going to give you a date night once every 2 weeks or once a month, for you guys just go focus on yourselves, or the respite care that the Archbishop was talking about, a family, able to take those kiddos for a weekend and just love on them and give the foster families just a little bit of space to be able to just sort of, calm down and reassess and get some renewed energy. Then those families that are supported with the care community end up saying 90% of them sign up to continue fostering that second year. So that's something that we're looking at, is just how can the church really come alongside? How do we create more of a culture of fostering and adopting in our parishes, so it's not this odd thing? I mean, this is a gospel mandate to care for the orphans and their distress. So how can we be looking at what are the needs around us? Who are the families who are fostering already? How can we support them? And how can we encourage other families? I have more people come to me, oh, I thought about fostering, we've thought about it, but they didn't take the next step. So get involved with the care community, learn more about it. And then maybe your heart will feel a little bit drawn towards doing it yourself, or maybe you'll be a respite provider. There's many different ways to get involved.
And part of the reason that we're having this right now is because around Advent and Christmas time, St. Joseph was a foster father. This is not foreign. This is not exotic, and Pope Francis has talked beautifully about how a father is about love. So there's no, he's not a real father, if you pour all your love into a child, you are that child's parent. And it's about building a true civilization of love. Deborah, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing in Kansas City?
Yes, happy to. Thank you so much for having me on. And Catherine, yeah, we definitely appreciate highlighting this right now. It is an urgent situation. As we said, over 400,000 children in foster care system across the United States. So it's urgent, and the church needs to become more involved. And one thing we need to understand is that there are so many wonderful Catholic families already stepping forward, like the Henkels are doing, right? They've opened their hearts, they've opened their homes to vulnerable children to care and love on them until they can safely return home. And that's beautiful. But as Kimberly said, first of all, they may not be getting the support that they need. And that statistic, about 50% of foster families are out because they're overwhelmed within the first year, is just tragic, because these are families who are maybe being truly called to do this ministry work, if you will. And if they are being called and willing to go through the training and open up their homes and say, yes, we want to do this, and yet they're still overwhelmed that they are backing out within the first year, there's something wrong. And that's where the church absolutely needs to step in. So we are so grateful here at the Archdiocese of Kansas City and Kansas to be led by our wonderful shepherd, as you all just heard from our Archbishop Naumann. And he has such a beautiful pro-life vision, of course, wanting to protect the unborn child, protect the woman who is maybe facing an unplanned or a difficult pregnancy. But his vision is so much bigger into making sure that every child is seen and loved and protected. And so that's why, he said, hey, he challenged us and said, we need to do more. So what are we going to do in the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas? And in 2019, he challenged us to form a foster ministry. And I feel so blessed to be, kind of leading a task force of really some wonderful people here in the Archdiocese. And we just took a lot of time studying and learning about the state of foster care in our state, and interviewing and meeting and learning what all the different organizations are doing to help, and kind of figuring out, okay, what are the practical ways that our church community can respond? And so we launched our Archdiocesan ministry in 2020, and we are still learning. We're really learning. It's a new ministry, and obviously we launched it right in the middle of COVID, so that's had its own challenges. But basically, our mission is to care for vulnerable children and the families who are caring for them. And our goal, as Archbishop said, is to really have a specific goal of raising up more Catholic families to not only foster children and love them and protect them until they can safely return home, but also raising up families who will adopt so that no child will age out of the system alone. So that's a whole nother category. You know, we think so many times of foster care as being little children, right? And that there's many of them. But there are teenagers who have been lagging in the system for years and years. And can you imagine? I mean, it's hard enough to adult when you have a loving, awesome, supportive family and moms and dads who care for you and are trying to protect you and help you make decisions. Can you imagine aging out of the system at 18 or 19 and having no one, not having been adopted? So our goal is to truly raise up more families, not only to foster, but to adopt children so that no children age out of the system alone. So Archbishop said, we know that not every family is called to foster. And so our goal is to really help provide practical ways that people, you know, can assist. And even if you're not called to be a foster family, there, as Kimberly mentioned, there are so many ways for individuals to help, for parishes to help, you know, kind of building this community of wrapping around families, because our aha moment is that we need to keep foster families' homes peaceful and calm so that those foster parents can continue to do the service that they do. And also, by the way, so many of our foster families, like Kimberly, the Henkels, they have their own bio children. So, you know, they need to maintain peace and calm with their family while they have their beautiful foster children with them, or their children in care is how we prefer to say it. And just keeping their homes as peaceful and calm as they can to work through. Boy, there's a lot of requirements of the system, and Kimberly can probably speak to that, but the state requires constant check-ins, visit with biological parents, maybe visits with biological siblings. There's a lot of counseling and extra meetings and CASA meetings and court dates. And I mean, it is just an incredibly full calendar. So whatever we as a church can do to help make that calm, we would love to do it. And sadly, I think you mentioned this, Catherine, but our Protestant and evangelical brothers and sisters have just historically done such a better job than the Catholics have in this area. And so we have a little bit of catching up to do, and we can do it because, like we said, it's the call of a Christian, it's the call of the gospel. But we know that when these families are supported, the retention rate of families staying in and fostering raises to up to over 90%. So I'd like to, is this a good time where maybe I could show just some practical things that we would suggest? So if Miranda can show, great, our model that we put together, if that can come up on the screen. We developed this model that for our foster ministry, and really it's levels of parish engagement, but this could also apply to an individual as well, for sure. Starting with awareness and then going up to hopefully inspiring more foster and adopted families. And all of these levels are important. This is where someone can engage in any of these levels to help vulnerable children and help foster families. But certainly the goal is to, you know, try to increase more families so that every child has a safe and loving home to stay in. So just to walk through these quickly, by the way, archkcks.com/foster is where you can find this if you want to take another look at it. And we are happy here in the Archdiocese to share any of this information with anyone. I hope you'll visit our website. There's a lot of great information. But the first level is to really, like we've all been talking about, just raising awareness and educating people. Like Kimberly said, I was one of those people as well who had no idea about the state of foster care in our state in Kansas, just completely oblivious. And I think if we just do the bare minimum of educating people on how many children are in care, and that these children are in care through no fault of their own, right? No fault of their own. I think that sometimes there's a stigma out there about what the foster system is, why children are in care. And they could be in care for a variety of reasons. Who knows? You know, maybe the parents are struggling with health issues. Maybe they are struggling with more significant issues such as addictions or maybe imprisonment. But maybe there's just a temporary situation where the parent cannot care for that child. So just raising awareness to people. We've had some parishes just do an awareness event, and right off the bat had 3 families just wake up immediately and feel called and, started their classes to become licensed. So that's incredible. If we can just, help people learn about what's happening in our own states, I think that helps. The next level is material support. Obviously, there's a lot of families who are struggling materially, struggling financially, and sometimes their children might be at risk for being removed because of not being able to nourish them or having beds or, whatever the situation is. So, of course, we've all heard about, backpack drives or Christmas gift drives, and all of that is amazing to help foster children. But when a foster family receives a child, sometimes they might receive them in the middle of the night, and children usually arrive with nothing, maybe a bag of, who knows, a pair of shoes or clothes. But so if our communities or our churches can help provide them with, oh my gosh, they might need bunk beds immediately. Maybe they have nothing for school. Let's, just help the foster families like immediately with whatever material support they need. But then there's also the biological families who are desperately trying to get their children back. And they have to go through a checklist and might have to have a bed instead of the children sleeping on the floor, or, so there's a lot of ways we can step in material to help. The next level is respite. And this is, Kimberly mentioned this, Archbishop Naumann mentioned this, but one easy thing is we just show appreciation to our foster families who are doing this. So many of our parishes may not even know who is fostering. And part of that is because our foster families are so humble and they don't want to say, hey, help me, help me. But if we can just figure out, who are the families who are fostering, and let's give them a beautiful, maybe even say a mass, an appreciation mass. We do that now in the Archdiocese, just appreciating them and maybe hosting them for a meal and doing a respite event. We just had a beautiful event where one of our larger parishes treated our foster families to this beautiful meal, spiritual nourishment. They got some education, time away while their kids were off having Chick-fil-A and playing in bounce houses and having face paint and, just doing a beautiful respite event. So there's a lot that we can do in that area to help our foster families feel loved, be seen, and just have a chance and an opportunity to recharge. Of course, number 4, then now we're getting into much more engagement, like relational here with forming care teams and having a team of 4 or 5 people wrapping around a foster family. We've talked a little bit about this, not just to provide meals, but maybe transportation, maybe childcare, maybe even coming over and saying, hey, let me mow your lawn. Can I do your laundry? Just in all these different ways that Kimberly's nodding her head like, yes, oh my gosh, that would have been glorious when she had those 3 little babies, right? And again, this is all to help them stay calm and stay fostering longer. But those who are involved in the care team, they start to see like, oh my goodness, if this is the kind of prayer, like these people praying for me and I'm going to be spiritually fed, and if this is the kind of community that's going to help me, I think maybe we could do this. And the hope is that this care community helps to feed more families stepping into the foster world or adopting world. So it's really a beautiful, we have a local organization called Joy Meadows that has this wonderful program there. The national corporation or the national organization is called Promise 686. So I encourage you to look into that. And then finally, all of this is to point to inspiring more foster families and adoption families so that, again, vulnerable children can be loved and protected until they can return home. Always the goal of foster care always is to reunite with their parents, their biological parents, but sometimes that isn't possible. And so if that isn't possible, then God willing, we can have more families adopt these children so that they do not age out of the system alone. So thank you, Miranda, for sharing that. And I hope that we're just encouraging our parishes to step in at any of those levels and get involved in any of those ways, and just trying to share this throughout the Archdiocese. And we're having some really nice results.
I just want to say, if you're watching this live, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. We'll be looking at that and integrating it in the conversation. Deborah, what you said about aging out is so critical, because often when we think about foster care and adoption, we think about babies, and there are more than enough couples who want babies who can't have them themselves naturally. And but when you know that there are children in America who purposely get themselves arrested because they've aged out of the foster care system, so they have somewhere to sleep and somewhere to eat, you can't unknow that fact. You know, you need to do something. How do we, you know, your point about raising up more foster care families, so critical. How do we help people with the fear? You know, there's a fear because obviously this child has had trauma. This child has been in the system. If you have other children, you're worried about as Kimberly mentioned, you're worried about the other children. How do we help people with that fear?
I think a lot of it comes back to education. And I think, you know, Kimberly will be able to speak well to this too. But I think it's important just to be honest with people. You're exactly right. Fostering is not easy. It is extremely beautiful. It's extremely rewarding, but it is challenging. And there are many moments, especially because, like we said, every child who is in foster care has experienced trauma, right? Just the fact that they have been removed from their home, removed from their parents or whoever's caring for them, that is traumatic in and of itself. But the sad fact is that many of these children have also been neglected, and many have been abused on top of that. So being honest with our families that yes, there is trauma involved, and we know that the evil one does not like the beautiful, loving ministry of foster care, right? So it's a spiritual warfare, and the families that I know who have stepped into this space, I mean, they are truly doing such beautiful work. So we have to be honest, but also families need to understand that there's a lot of resources out there for training. And this is where, again, the church can help with support groups. You know, when you don't feel like you're alone and facing these things on your own and having others that you can talk to, that's what's so important about the work that Kimberly's doing. But so those are some of the recommendations I would give. But to talk about that aging out, those stats are alarming. And if you're not aware that, you know, it's almost like 60% of kids who age out, as you said, end up imprisoned, maybe sometimes intentionally, right?
Right.
Teenage pregnancy is high. For girls who age out, it's almost 70% of them become pregnant, you know, within a year or two after aging out of the system. The majority of kids who are human trafficked come from the foster system. So the statistics are alarming. And so we have to intervene. The church has to intervene. And so if we could get those kids adopted, but even if we can mentor them, like while they're, so many of our teens are living in group homes because those children are a little bit more hard to find foster homes. So they're living in group homes. If we could, that's what we're working on right now in the Archdiocese, is trying to get our parishes to adopt, if you will, kids in, adopt, I'm saying like mentoring, like going and visiting and being there to become mentors for these children. So it's really critical and as you said, heartbreaking.
Kimberly, do you want to add to that?
Yes. You know, one of the things that we're trying to do at Springs of Love is trying to highlight stories, telling the stories, because I think that, you know, if we don't have a face or a story behind a lot of these children, these families, it seems very scary. But we just we're doing a series of short little films right now, short little videos, and we just interviewed Tori Peterson. And she is a young lady who aged out of the foster care system. And, you know, I mean, they say 3% of children who age out graduate from college. She ended up finding a track coach who really mentored her. And, you know, everybody else was telling her, you're going to be just like your mother. You're going to be a statistic. You know, there's no hope for you. And he was like, you're resilient. He's like, no, don't believe that. You're resilient. Look at what you've been through. Because she had a crazy trauma, awful abuse, all sorts of stuff. She just wrote a book called Fostered. It's a bestseller. I highly recommend it. But like I said, we just interviewed her. And, you know, when you hear her speaking, you think, oh my gosh, I would totally foster her. I would have her come in my home. Like, you know, and of course, yes, she had a lot of trauma. These children have, but you know, if we can begin to, there's so much beautiful training out there right now that we can learn how to really help somebody who has been through that. But it's like, you know, we're all broken, right? We're all broken. But like Jesus, like the answer is Jesus, right? We have Jesus. Like this is what we need to be sharing with these children who have been so let down by their earthly fathers and mothers and have had so much heartache. The only one who can truly heal them is Jesus. And I just feel like they belong with us in the church. We need to be surrounding them with love and care and community and support and finding friends, you know, helping them have a community of love. This is why the church is so important. It's not just that this child is in this family. It's like there's a whole community that we can be wrapping around these children and showing them what it really means to be a follower of Jesus.
You know, it's not optional to get into this work. You know, the Sermon on the Mount is pretty clear. And when we think about what, you know, obviously we talked about Joseph being a foster father, but if we truly believe what we say we believe about Jesus dying for us, suffering for us, it makes wrapping your mind around foster care with all of the messes more doable, more realistic, because this is what what's been modeled for us, right? Selfless love. There's a question here that I think is critical. Our church is on the front lines of the pro-life movement, and it's relatively easy to get people in the parish excited and motivated to go to the March for Life, support pregnancy centers, and things like that. How can we create more awareness of what you're all sharing about in our parishes and respect life groups? This again, I think speaks to there's a new urgency now that Roe versus Wade is over. And I don't see pro-life people and Christian people, faith-based people necessarily appreciating that fact. We need to show that we, as Archbishop Naumann was talking about, you know, there's this caricature that we only care about babies until they're born, but sometimes we give credence to that caricature because we you know, it's not enough to just support ending funding for Planned Parenthood or voting the right way, so to speak. You know, how do we really, in practical ways, light a fire under people? Deborah, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I think I hate to be a broken record, but I think sometimes it is just going back to awareness. I do truly believe that so many people just aren't understanding. And if we start talking about pro-life and not just talking about the unborn child and the woman in need and all of that, you know, Walking with Moms initiative, all of that is critical. But as soon as we start folding in foster care ministry into it, you know, that should just be rolling off our tongues as pro-life people, as this is all part of the big picture of what it means to be pro-life. So people would stop and say foster care, like, you know, people might ask me, well, why is the foster care ministry under your office, Deb? Like, why? And then when you stop to think about it, you're like, of course it is. This just makes sense, right? So it's raising that awareness and helping people to see that, you know, I think so many people they're moved when they learn about it, their heart breaks and they, you know, feel like something has to be done. But so many people feel like it's daunting, like to take that leap from something needs to be done to, okay, I'm ready to become a foster parent. If we can show them that there is, again, these little things that you can start to do to assist, and that's all building that culture, and that is a response, then they can start to see. So I have this great gentleman who is so on fire and passionate about helping foster children. And he just says, we just need our people to get and meet these kids. Like a lot of the kids that he's working with are 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, and they're just awesome. And he's like, all we need is to get people to go, to maybe some of these foster homes and just meet them. And you cannot help but fall in love with them. These kids have names and passions and fun, and they're just like every other kid, except for they just don't have a mom or a dad. So all we need to do is find ways to get our parishes, our people, interacting with these children or with families who are fostering, and people just can't but want to help. So it's providing those avenues, it's raising awareness, and really, if we intentionally work in our parishes to raise awareness about what's happening to vulnerable children in our country, and then if we intentionally set up opportunities for families and individuals to come and just meet these kids and get to know them and love them, good things will happen. I truly believe it. The Holy Spirit will take it from there.
Kimberly, do you want to add to that?
Yes, there are some amazing Protestant organizations already out there. There's one called Wait No More. And I read that book when I was, looking into adopting, and Wait No More. They were like, look, there are all these kids right now. And that helps spur us on to pursue fostering. So they hold these big events where they will come to an area, invite a whole bunch of churches to come. They give a big presentation, and they'll have hundreds of people sign up to become foster families. That's the kind of stuff we need to be doing. We need to be hosting big events, sharing stories, having beautiful ways of telling the stories, right? Like I just feel like storytelling is really critical to this. But then just inspiring people. So this is why, like Springs of Love, we want to inspire. We want to, I say encourage, educate, and equip. But that's like, we want to encourage people, because I think that we think about it and it can just stay in our head as like an idea. But if we go to an actual event, like Deborah was talking about, these, awareness events in our parishes, just have, after Mass, have a coffee donut event and have somebody come and speak, a local representative, as well as hopefully like a foster family that's already fostering, and talk about their stories. I think it's incredibly inspiring. Our Columbus Catholic Times just featured fostering and adopting on the cover of our latest issue of the newspaper, and told some of the stories of some of the local families who are fostering and adopting, which I find incredibly inspiring. And I want to go and foster more. But, I just think, people hearing more of these stories. And then, of course, if there's a care community surrounding, if that's a possibility, I think that's incredibly encouraging. So if we can try to start up some of these care communities in our parishes and our dioceses, and we start using the language and talking more about this, I think it'll inspire more people.
Deborah mentioned this before. You mentioned Wait No More. Kimberly, my dear friend, Kelly Rosati, used to work there at Focus on the Family, running that program. And one of the things that is really so inspiring to me is, like, we can't be Pollyannish about this. As Deborah said, there are severe challenges sometimes that come with fostering because of the trauma that children have experienced. But Kelly always says they're God's children. Like, God loves them more than even I do, and I love them so much. And so again, this has been talked about before, but really believing that God's grace and the Holy Spirit, Deborah, as you said, will help you through this. And the fact of the matter is, if you have biological children, things aren't perfect. Things are never perfect, right? And so just receiving children as, as God's children who we're blessed to be able to be a part of their lives, is really critical. And I often think that our cardinal sin as Americans is self-reliance. We think that it's all about us, and it's not. And I think that is that's an entryway to freedom for families to believe that they can do this critical foster care work. I can't believe it, but we're almost out of time. So I want to invite Julia, if you want to come back in, and Kimberly and Deborah to just give some last words of encouragement to people. Kimberly, do you want to start us out?
Sure. I just think, yeah, I mean, I've been really inspired by the work that's already happening right now in the Protestant community. Promise 686 is an amazing ministry. Like we said, the Wait No More. There's a bunch already out there. I just think it's time now for the Catholics to be entering this space and really offering this loud and clear. I think, May is National Foster Care Awareness Month. I think we should start thinking now, okay, what are we going to plan? We need to be planning a big something in May, doing some awareness events and letting people know, like, this is a really urgent need, and it's time for the Catholic Church to really be stepping up and taking care of these children, because absolutely these are God's children, and He is calling us to be the solution to the foster care crisis.
And we should also add that when we weren't such a bureaucracy, we were taking care of orphans. I think of Mother Cabrini, for example. So many of the hospitals and orphanages and Catholic schools, obviously, were because of Catholics actually living the gospel mandate. And so we need to get back to our roots. Julia, do you want to give some final words?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I affirm everything that was just shared, and thank our panelists for joining us today, for sharing with us also the work that they do, both in their homes and in the diocese. I just wanted to add that there is also a program that's maybe not very well known, that is sponsored by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, that is actually in foster care. And it's not just in Catholic Charities, but it is specifically it's partly funded by the federal government, and it is specifically for unaccompanied refugee children. So unaccompanied minors who come across the border and need a foster parent. So that is also something worthy of looking into, of course. So that's just to say that even here at the Conference of Bishops, there is an arm that is specifically designated to that specific area of need, foster care for unaccompanied minors who cross the border. So, but absolutely, I just to reiterate what Kimberly just shared, with May nearly around the corner, because every month just flies by more quickly than the other. I think that there is an opportunity, especially in this post-Roe society, and especially given that the bishops have called for us to strengthen and support the family and families in their messiness and in every form and composition. And so providing families to those children without one is specifically in this area. And it's a call from the bishops in the pastoral framework for Call to the Joy of Love. And Pope Francis also has reiterated this a number of times, that we have to be a family building church, right? So let's do that together and find creative ways to do it. And Deb has set kind of a plethora of options there for us. And it's a great model that every diocese and parish could replicate. So again, but thank you, all of you. And thanks to our listeners for joining us today, joining in this conversation. And especially at this time of Advent, when we're preparing our hearts to receive the Christ child, and we can receive these children with open hearts as well, as the Holy Spirit inspires us. So thank you to everyone today, and to Catherine, especially to National Review Institute, for helping us on the back end.
Well, I want to mention, we mentioned a couple of times Walking with Moms in Need, which was an initiative that Archbishop Naumann really orchestrated when he ran the pro-life office in the Bishops' Conference. And the idea is for every Catholic parish to do essentially an examination of conscience to see what they're doing to help walk with moms in need, what the needs are in the community, and obviously what more they can do. And that's part of the work that Deborah's doing. Before I give Deborah a last word, I just want to say there's a book called No Way to Treat a Child by Naomi Schaefer Riley, where she focuses on some of the things that work, and some of the Protestant groups that Kimberly mentioned are a part of her book, but also she talks about what the reality of foster care in America is. And it's the kind of book that when you read it, you can't forget it. And I think we have January even closer than May. And as we mark the March for Life again, even now without Roe, what more can we do to make sure that no child is left behind, as Archbishop Naumann said? Deborah, can you give us some last words?
Well, sure. Everyone has wrapped up very nicely, but I do just want to say thank you again. There's probably many people on here who are in one way or another, maybe a foster family or an adoptive family, or maybe you're working in some way to serve these vulnerable children. So I have a profound respect and gratitude for you. And so just thank you so much for what you are already doing. And just as Julia said, as the season of Advent, as we are opening and getting ready to welcome the Christ child, let's just all really pray about and really be intentional about ways that we can welcome all children in our community and just make sure that every child has a safe and loving and loving home to be in. And that's what we're praying for. So thank you everyone for your time.
And I would encourage everyone to visit springsoflove.org, because Kimberly and her husband are really doing beautiful work, not only in their personal witness of their family life, but trying to encourage, or actually encouraging other families. Thank you so much if you joined us live today. Thank you if you're watching this after the fact. On behalf of the National Review Institute, the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas, Springs of Love, and the U.S. Conference of Bishops Secretariat of Laity, Marriage, Family, Life, and Youth. We hope to do something like this again, maybe in person. And so please keep taking a look at the National Review Institute, and I'll share that as soon as we figure out what our next steps are. And thank you again. I want to underscore what Deborah said. I personally saw of parents, foster parents on this live stream, and thank you for the work that you do. And if you're thinking about fostering, please know that you're in our prayers, and please share this with others, because this is a critical time. People around Christmas time are thinking of the less fortunate, and the less fortunate is a child who needs a home, who deserves nothing less than love. So whatever we can do to step up to the plate, we need to. Thank you so much.